This prime Whistler accommodation, Glacier Lodge, offers luxurious accommodation for up to 8 visitors. Ski-in, ski-out convenience makes this Whistler accommodation one of the most sought-after accommodation destinations in Whistler Blackcomb. Glacier Lodge offers all the amenities to make your vacation as comfortable and pleasurable as possible. 3 bedrooms set up as king-size doubles or twin singles accommodate 6, while the sleeper couch can accommodate another 2. 2 full bathrooms also add to your convenience. The fully equipped kitchen will make catering a breeze. For more information or to contact us, please click the link below.